Welcome back to Latino Paradox. I'm Ruben, Navarrette, and it's my friend Arnold Torres. As we sit and talk about the issues of the week, the issue, obviously, Arnold, this week was a pair of Democratic scandals related to the Clinton administration, and actually to Hillary Clinton directly and some folks in ClintonWorld. And the reason those scandals were important, they had to do with things that we talk about, the Trump dossier, which was prepared by a former British agent and debates about its authenticity and reliability. But now we know that the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton paid for the production of the dossier. That was not previously known, and that's been a shocker to some folks, shaking up things, because the dossier led to the appointment of a special counsel and wiretaps and investigations and all sorts of things. Beyond that, the bigger story, perhaps in my mind, is the story about Uranium One, how it is that a Soviet-run company, a Russian-run company, directly tied to the Russian government, ended up with 20% of the U.S. uranium supply, and whether it's a coincidence that Bill Clinton ended up with a $500,000 speaking engagement in Moscow, and whether it was further a coincidence that the Uranium One company contributed over $100 million to the Clinton Foundation. So none of this looks good. None of this looks good, certainly for the Democrats. Well, what do you think? How do you think we got here? I mean, that's the main question we have to begin with. How do you think we got to the point where we have now incredible cynicism among people? Nobody thinks either political party is virtuous. How do you think we got here?
We got here, in my opinion, because it's a reflection of how we generally approach democracy. We're very lazy about it. We're not on top of it. We play favorites. At this time, there's two favorites. They're not very great choices, either one of them, as they were reflected in the election. And I think that when you don't work very hard to protect democracy, these are the results of what you get. You get abuse of power. You get, this one isn't as bad as the other one. You get into the constant diverting attention from what's important, what isn't too important. It's always, well, you're worse than I am. No, I'm not, because this is that. And so I think America is getting what it paid for. America is getting exactly what we deserve because we've allowed the thing to get to this point. I don't think there's any way around that.
At the beginning in 2016, you had about 15 Republicans running for the job. You had 6 or 7 Democrats running for the job. It did not need come to this. It need not come to a situation where you had Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump. The media wanted that matchup. There was no question about it, and they got it. And it was good for ratings, but bad for the country. And one of the things I think that tells us how we got here, or explains how we got here, is we're never quite going to be rid of the stench of Donald Trump on the Republican side, and you're never quite going to be rid of the stench of Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side. These are not people who typically fade into the sunset. Just this week, Arnold, in the middle of all this, as Democrats were trying to say Hillary Clinton is not the issue. She's a private citizen. She's not the president. It doesn't matter. That very moment, Hillary Clinton was giving a speech saying, I will not be ignored. I will not be silenced. I do not intend to be silenced. And the Republicans were saying, great, speak up, girl. We love it. Just keep talking. And the Democrats were saying, you got to be kidding me. I mean, you got to be kidding me. So I think we got here because of these two individuals and because of a very unique race in 2016 that you can tell your kids and grandkids about, because that is a contest of Clinton versus Trump that we will be paying dividends for in this country for a long, long time.
Yeah, I think we have just a tremendous amount of enablers in this country. We enable these people to do what they do. We allow this abuse of power to accumulate itself. I mean, to the point where, the Clintons pretty much felt that they owned the presidency for the Democratic Party. And now you have another egomaniac on the other side who really doesn't care at all about the United States. So it's basically twiddly-dee and twiddly-dum, heckle and jekyll. It's, choose your poison, and there's definitely poison. And the problem is that we get into this comparison of my poison is not as bad as your poison. And we never really deal with the causes of the poison. We just keep dealing only with its symptoms. And I think that this was a prime example, the way the Democrats handled the questioning and the accountability, instead of just simply coming out and saying, it should be looked into. Let's just get to the facts. Let's find out exactly what happened, and let's just go from there. And that wasn't the response.
You're a Washington veteran. You've been around Washington, D.C. in politics for a long, long time. You know both Podestas, Tony Podesta and John, of them. You know their group, the Podesta Group. You know that the Podesta Group made $40 million from the Russian deal. Questions are now being raised. There's going to be an arrest, in fact, tomorrow by the special counsel. But we don't know that when that arrest is made, when they start squeezing that person, if it's in fact Paul Manafort, who's he going to give up? Is he going to give up? We were working on the assumption he was going to give up Donald Trump. Now it may be he gives up Tony Podesta.
That's right.
So in that case, the Democrats are going to wish, that they had never heard the phrase special counsel. Stay tuned. The other part of the question I want to get to is the Latino Paradox. In terms of the Latino Paradox, how does this whole story play into the idea of Latinos and this perceived sense that we have all this power, the power to vote for a political party, in this case the Democratic Party, that seems to know how to help itself, and it seems to know how to enrich the people in the inner core, the Clintons, everybody connected to the Clintons, but doesn't seem to do too well in terms of improving the lives of the rest of us.
Well, I think this speaks to the fact that it's a prime example of the paradox, because we're a part of it. We're a part of this problem that we're discussing. We begin to believe what anybody tells us. It's almost as if we're in Mexico and we're back to the days when the PRI would buy clean white shirts for the voters in the ranchos and the colonias to come into the city to vote. That's how we behave. And I know some people may take offense to that, but the reality is that we're smarter than this. We certainly have a lot more information coming our way that allows us to be much more discriminating about who we're voting for. And I think that's at the heart of the Latino paradox. Our inability to be more discriminating with our vote, our inability to really understand the phenomenal leverage that we have if we could really start voting informatively and very, very discriminating. Be much more aggressive in recognizing how valuable our vote really is and only giving it to people that actually deserve it. So it's a prime example of the paradox, in my opinion.
It's a very good point, because we spend so much time in the last 30 years talking about voter registration drives, getting people to vote, as if the goal somehow is merely to get them registered and to vote. We never got to the third part. The third part is knowing how to vote smart, knowing how to be discriminating in how you vote. And if it really is so important that people register and vote, if in fact your vote, is tu voz, if really that slogan means anything, that your vote is your voice, then how is it? You want to talk about a paradox? Here's a paradox. We have said that the vote is so valuable and so important, and yet we trivialize it. We take this thing that we have said is so valuable and so important. The idea somehow that tu voto es tu voz, this idea somehow that it means so much. It means so much that we have trivialized it and not emphasized the importance of being a discriminating voter and choosing carefully. I think that about sums it up, folks. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Latino Paradox. Tune in next time. Until then, I'm Ruben Navarrette with Arnold Torres.